Converting from DC to DCC along with LED running lights? Surely not. Let me show you how. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. Now if you watched the last video, and if you didn't, there's a link here, you'll have seen me convert a 1980s type ring-filled motor HST power car into one of these, with one of these CD type motors fitted, and all the equipment I've used for this is down in the Show More tab. Oh, and the Show More tab, some people can't find it. If you're watching on a computer, shrink the screen down and it's just below the screen. But if you're watching it, I believe, on a tablet and a phone, then the Show More tab is actually located on the right hand side. There's a little down arrow just under the screen. If you hit the down arrow, down comes all the Show More tab. I digress. Right, so what are we going to do this time? Well, we're going to convert this one now to DCC using an 8-pin decoder. But before we do that, I was asked by a couple of people, are we not losing power when we convert from DC to DCC? So to that end, I've invested in a gauge. Ooh. So how is our scientific experiment going to work? Well, here we have the little Newton's gauge. Well, to be perfectly honest, it's not much more than a spring balance, but it is quite, what would you say, responsive, let's say. And I've secured it with a bradawl through into the baseboard, and I've attached it to this Loco with something called an India tag, which I'm sure you recognise as some kind of form of paperclip. So all I need do is start up with my little Loco, and then obviously it puts pressure on the Newton's gauge and we get a reading, and as you can see, that's 0.4 of a Newton. Now rest assured, I don't believe that this is the most accurate gauge that is known to man. This cost not a huge amount of money, but it's not some great electronic advice, and I don't actually believe that the readings will be true. But if we pull, say, 0.2 of a Newton with this chassis and 0.4 of a Newton with this one, then clearly we can see the efficiency of one compared to another. So not necessarily believing the figures, but what we will get is an indication of the amount of pulling power that these can put down. So we'll firstly test this one, then we shall test this one with the new upgraded motor, and then eventually we shall test this one with the DCC conversion. And how do we do all that? Well, we simply use the good old faithful duet, which is our supply of DC power. So we're all cranked up to the Newton's gauge, and as you can see, the India tag's there ready to go. So switching to the faithful old duet, if I turn up some power, and then hopefully this old ring-filled motor will eventually, hang on, here we go, will burst into life. It's just starting to slip now, but I will give it all it's got. And it appears to be 0.35 of a Newton. So we have a benchmark. So we'll whip this one off and switch to the other one. Then hopefully the one modified with the CD type drive should hopefully perform somewhat better. Sometimes these little experiments, it's the sheer simplicity of it that does it so well. Right, all back in, make sure we're zeroed. Yes, we are. Okay, so back to the duet, and this is with the new CD drive motor in it, and we'll pull this one up. And away she goes, somewhat quieter. We're starting to get some slippage now. But as with the other one, I'll go to full power. And what do we have? still going there. 0.5 of a newton. In fact, no, we'll go for that. 0.5, 0.6. I think 0.7 of a newton is fair to say. I think what's true to say is that at the end of the day, it's far more efficient than the old one. Bless her. So now all we need to do is repeat the process once we've converted this little baby to DCC. And now on to our conversion. Now this is a Hornby Western, many years old, and it was my first attempt to converting DC to DCC, and it kind of tainted my view really because I made a pig's ear of it. It's got a Ringfield motor in, it runs like a dog, and here is the 8-pin decoder, and in true Charlie Bishop fashion I got all the decoder, I cut the 8-pin socket off and got all the cables and mashed them all together and did a bit of soldering and stuck some tape over them, and it runs not adequately. It doesn't. It's just it just needs TLC. It needs a new motor in it. Get rid of this decoder. Use this one in something like a coach or a guards van for the lights. Put a new decoder in here that works well and sort of brings back to life. And of course, I can always put it behind a more of a a dapole or whatever as a double header, and it would look quite nice. So that's the way not to do it. So which is the way I'm going to do it? Well, I found this little gem from ESU, if I can find my glasses, there they are, as he pokes the microphone. And this little 8-pin socket could be useful if you want to keep some distance between your decoder and its outputs. So let's say you wanted this in a coach where there wasn't room for the decoder itself or whatever, this could be useful. Not in my case. Oh, sorry, that's the ESU 51950. Not in this case, as I said. Here's something from Trainomatic. Now, Trainomatic make this little circuit board, and there are solder tabs around it. And it's not expensive, but I've found an even cheaper answer, and it's this little gem here, found on eBay. Well, actually, someone led me into it on eBay, and it's from Illuminated Models. And you'll be astounded to see the quality because it's quite basic really, doesn't need much quality, and all you have is an 8-pin socket with 8 solder tabs. Now in one of the corners there is a 0 or an O, and hopefully you can see it here. Now using this extensive diagram, this is the same way around as this now, so the motor go at diagonally opposed ends, so O for orange. Okay, so there's the motor, and the track are at the other corners, and it's red and black to the track, grey and orange to the motor. And if I run through this, the yellow is for the rear lights, the green isn't used, coming back around, the white is for the front lights, and the blue is the common. So if you wanted to turn on your rear lights, you would have a line coming from the yellow into the light, meeting up with the common blue, and obviously when you change the function then on your decoder, or whether it's automated as in with the direction that the train is running, the lights will come on and go off. All straightforward stuff. And this is an NMRA standard, so it should be the same for everything. And this, as you're probably aware, is a helping hand. Anything I use, there's normally a link in the Show More tab. Now, what we need to do with this little decoder socket is to tin these 8 contacts. And to do that, all I tend to do is pop it onto a helping hand like so. And then all I will do then is solder onto these tabs, and then we'll be ready to offer it up into the Loco body and crack on from there. Now invariably people want to know what I use, and I always use 60/40 solder and my trusty old soldering iron. So hopefully you can see, so I'm going to just work from the front to the back. So all I do is pop a bit of heat on and then add a dab, and all I'm trying to do is leave a little bit of solder on each pad ready for the cable. Doesn't take much heat. and hopefully that's enough. Yep, looks okay to me, but the main thing to ensure you do is you don't have any solder crossing from one pad to another. So all we need to do now is get it on the Loco. So here we are with the cables pulled back out of the way, and it reveals obviously the weight, and obviously the weights that Steve has actually added. So where are we going to put our little circuit board? Well, this space here is lovely and big, and ideal place for a speaker should we fit one at a later date. And this one here ought to go there. There's obviously clearly an issue there. This is all made of metal. So what I shall do, I shall cut out a couple of pieces of tape and tape over this weight, and then get some black tack. And black tack is like blue tack, but much more tacky, as they say. And black tack this board onto the tape there. Then I can set about soldering it on. A word of warning with black tack doesn't like to get hot. If it gets hot, then it gets really sort of molten and it goes everywhere and can ruin decoders. So just be aware of that. Obviously it's not going near the decoder, but a word of warning. Now before I start, I'm going to use these wire strippers. Every time I get asked about these, if you Google this number, it'll take you to the manufacturer. I can't find a link on Amazon or anywhere else. They're not cheap, made by RS, I think it's Radio Shack or something like that, but they are the dog's doodahs. Right, onward. Now, as you can see, these are the feeds to the motor where we ran it before, and so that must be a track feed, and that must be a track feed. So the first thing we need to do is to cut these back, and I don't really want to waste too much of this. I want to keep my options open. So now forget about the diode, get rid of that one, get rid of that track feed. So we're now left focusing on the two cables for the motor. Now if you remember, one of the motor cables goes to pin 1, which was orange, and the other one goes to the grey, which is the one horizontally opposed. So if I were to route that sort of like that and then solder it onto there, hopefully that all makes sense and you can see what I'm doing. So let's cut him off and solder him up first. Get rid of that. With those super duper little wire strippers. Obviously I don't need to strip very much off. And the red we're going to just go around the corner onto that opposite pad onto there. So we'll snip that about there. Never snip it too short. Yeah, we've all done that, haven't we? Okay, that looks okay, so we'll trim that bit. No, I've cut a little bit too much insulation away there, so we shall remove some of that cable. And then we'll come in with a soldering iron and just tin those two bits of cable. Hopefully you can see this okay. So dab of heat onto the cable and then dab a solder onto there. Beautiful. Same again with that one. And then it doesn't really matter which one goes where, so I'm going to put the black onto pin 1, which is a motor, and hopefully you can see this. Dab onto there. Lovely, and then the same on the other side with the red going into motor grey. Okay, 2 down, initially 2 to go. Right, so if that's those 2 done, then next must be the track. So this is one feed from the track, which needs to go into the other corners, and the other track comes from the body shell there. So if we put this one into there, so I'll trim that one off at about there, bit of slack on it. perhaps put him in first. Don't think I got him. That's better. So that can go into track red. Lovely. And then finally the other one is fed from this little bit of cable here. So we need to snip off this piece of heat shrink that I put in previously and then put another piece of cable to splice in to go to, what is it, pin 4. Excuse me while I cough. Right, I just need to get another bit of cable. So snip that off. Pull that back. And I also need some heat shrink to join up with that. Now hopefully you can see against my hand, I've soldered these two wires. This is just a gash bit of 702 and I slide a little bit of heat shrink over that to cover that join, and then with the soldering iron I just add some heat. Just look at that, marvellous, isn't it? I just add some heat to the heat shrink to get it to bond. It stiffens the joint up and obviously makes it more rigid. Lovely. Pop that back into where it came from, which is along the side of the body shell, to bring the other track power feed in, and we're going into pin 4, which was funny old thing, which is track black. So we come into there. I'm sorry if you get it a little bit, it's all a bit hidden from you now. Trim that one off there. And again, it's very small cable being stripped back. We don't need very much at all on these contact pads. And then hopefully we can just top that one into there. And that will be the track powered up. Okay. So let's double check. So we've got track power coming in and coming in onto pin 8. Then the other track power must come in off the body shell into pin 4. And then the power to the motor then comes off onto these two red and blacks, which are pins 1 and 5. That all seems straightforward. Not to worry about these other cables. These are the cables for the lights. Obviously we'll come to that in a bit. So all's good. So what do we do now? Well, I shall fit a decoder and then stick it on the track. Now what decoder am I going to use? I've got a couple of old ones lying around, so bear with me while I dig one out. Here we go. This is a Lock Pilot basic decoder, and it's just a case of popping it in to make sure things work before we go kind of at market and decide what we're going to do. Now the orange is cable 1. Remember, the orange goes to the pin 1, and hopefully you can see orange is there. So we pop this one into here, and then we go to the track. Exciting stuff. Well, we finally arrived at the dazzling world of DCC, and there's the Lock Pilot basic decoder. It's one I use for sort of testing stuff, and this is my Digitrax handset. So we want to set this Loco up, so it should be Loco 3 Loco. It's the scary bit. And if I turn the right hand throttle, there she goes. And bring her back. We have success. So we know she works. I think the next thing to do now is to tackle the lights, and then we'll put it back together and give it a test run. So it's now time to set about replacing this filament bulb. So what's available? Well, after some digging around on eBay, I came across this chap, Black Cat Technology, and this gentleman makes or imports or whatever these two little circuit boards, and each board contains 3 solder tabs marked A, B and C, and there are 2 red LEDs and 2 white LEDs. And the instructions are actually quite decent, really. You know, a couple of sides of paper goes into it, DC or DCC, whatever floats your boat. It says there you utilise, as I mentioned before, the blue, yellow and white terminals on the decoder. So, being a radical kind of guy, I've got a piece of blue, white and yellow cable. Sadly, these are all 702. I could have done with something a little bit finer, really. So I shall set about soldering these on to the solder pads and then connecting them up and see if let there be light, as they say. Now, first things first, let's get rid of this seating area. Pull that out. We need to get rid of that cable under there, so we'll drop that unit out. We can pull that track feed off. Hopefully, yep, that's that one away. Pop the wheels back in. Get rid of that. Get rid of the lamp. Okay, now we can see that this is actually where we need our plate to sit. I imagine we're going to use our old friend black tack, but first I will need to solder on those cables. So it's back to the helping hand and a bit of soldering. Now, to tin these, I have changed the soldering iron tip, so I've got a smaller tip on here, and hopefully this should tin up just as easily. Nope, didn't get that one. Okay, let's have a little look. Yep, we're good. And I think the blue wire goes to C. So hopefully that'll come in focus for you. Whoops, man overboard. It's all falling apart. Yes, blue wire for C. A bit more. And hopefully, so if we can do it that way. That's that one on. So I should just repeat it for the other two. So give them a little tug. Beautiful. Now I have another little piece of black tack that I'm going to put on the back of the circuit board, and then hopefully that'll keep it in place. And I've removed the seats, as it were, from the cabin of the Locos. So if I pop that into there and press it into place, that should hopefully keep it there. I didn't really want to glue it in or anything too serious, just in case we have an issue. And then if I pop the cabin back on, there are a couple of cuts where the cable should be routed through. So one pops into there, and then one the other side. And I tried to make a third one with the Dremel, and it went a little bit bonkers, really. So there's the third one going in there, and what I think I shall do is just pop a little bit of tape here across these when we're done. So now we need to cut these up and obviously solder them to the board. So the next thing to do really is to get this decoder out of the way. So we'll pop that off. There she goes. And solder these 3 cables onto their respective tabs. So now I've trimmed back the cables and tinned them, and I'm just going in here to put yellow onto pad 2 and then white, nope, we'll go blue first, blue onto pad 7. And finally white onto pad 6. A little more reluctant this one, there we go. Okay, does that all make sense, hopefully? With the blue cable I just ended up twisting it underneath the yellow one to keep it in the right place, and hopefully that'll do. So now we need to zip back to the track and see if the lights work. So here we are back on the track, and if I flash up number 3, turn the lights on, what have we got? 2 reds. If I reverse it, 2 whites, and if I send it on its way, we can see that it's white going in reverse and it's red going forward. So clearly we have to change the wires over. Marvellous. Now all I've done is just quickly removed the lighting board excuse me, and reversed the yellow and the white cables. So now hopefully if I send it forward and then when I reverse it, lovely, so it works. Right, let's reassemble it and put the lid on. So here we are, back on the main layout with its body shell fitted. Now, so if I press 0 on my controller, on come the lights. If I reverse the loco, we lose the whites and we got the reds. Lovely, so I send the loco away, reverse the loco. Lovely, and what a lovely slow running speed it is with that new motor. However, it's not all as simple as it seems, because in a certain part of the layout, when it hits this long diamond crossing, there's a short, and you can hear the PM42 cutting out. And what's causing this short isn't actually anything to do with these modifications. It's the fact that this loco's wheels are so wide that it actually bridges across the 2 rails on the diamond crossing. So it bridges across the frog here and the frog here. That's just one of those things really. But now let's have a little look at its pulling power. So exactly the same setup as before, except this time we're on the layout rather than just a piece of track. And if we zoom in a little bit, and the first loco with the ring-filled motor, if you remember, I think got up to 3.5, and then this one with a lot of noise and effort seemed to get to 0.7. Not too sure how that really happened. Anyway, so now it's the time to turn this one up and we'll see what happens here. Well, lots of slippage going on now, and I think we've got to just about 0.5, I think, if I lean over. No, just under 0.5, about 0.48. So there is some truth in it. We do lose a little bit of power going from DC to DCC. Now I've also done exactly the same for the unpowered trailer car. So again, we've got the same board with a bit of black tack on it stuck in. There's my 8-pin decoder, and I've just popped the decoder into that little stowage. I don't really need to do anything here. I'll just secure these wires down a little bit and then pop the cover back on. So now it may appear rather bizarre, but we have the two power cars, and obviously she's red and she's white, and if I press the reverse key, then they naturally flip over, which is the right way actually, because this is the power car and this is the trailer car, and being DCC I can pick this up and turn it around, and obviously the lights will stay at red. I just thought I'd bring them alongside so you can see them. Easy. And so now if I move the power car, it should go backwards. And I change direction, and the power car should go forwards, and naturally the trailer car would have its reds on. Well, it would appear that you can teach an old dog new tricks after all. With a couple of my Mark III buffet cars on him, he's going up the helix without any problem at all. But I haven't fitted the magnets for the power base. Perhaps that's, Steve, something you need to look into. But he's a little gem, and with the lights on it makes all the difference. Well, I must confess I'm very pleased with its performance. I mean, sadly it's not going to stack up to the current model. I mean, my one, a 2008, is 25. She's 25 years older than my new one, so there has to be some progress over time, clearly. But I'm well pleased with the way it coped up the helix, even though it's only pulling 2 coaches. Perhaps if you've got one, it might pull 4 or 6. The steeper the helix, the more problems you've got. But for running on the flat, what a cracking little Loco. And of course, if it is struggling, just get another power car and whack it on the other end. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this one with the old DC to DCC conversion, is the fact that if you install the 8-pin socket and wire that in, then it opens the world up to you. You can then chop and change your decoders. You can put in a sound decoder, or you can pull your decoders and put a DC plug back in and run it on DC, and you'll still have the beauty of those LED running lights. Brilliant. When you come to program them, of course, they must have the same address, and they must be the other way around, because obviously you don't want whites at both end and reds at both end. So when you do your programming, it might take a little bit more thought. But there we go. I think it's an excellent way of reviving a tired locomotive, let's say. And of course, it's not just 125s, is it? You know, there's 47s and 52s, all sorts out there that you can do this for. The product for the lights, that's those small 2 little circuit boards by Black Cat. Again, check out the Show More tab. I'll leave it in there. I think those were £12.50 for those 2, and I think it was £2.50 for the socket. So for 15 quid, I did this conversion, plus of course your decoder of choice. It's to be honest, it's a gift, really, isn't it? It really is. It really is. So there we go, that wraps this one up. So what I'm going to do next time is we're back to track, and we might do a little bit of blending and weathering. So I hope you'll join me for that in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, I'd like to thank my patrons. And there's the button. If you want to be one and help support the channel, then please hit the button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free, and a video here and here. See you in 2 weeks. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.